Well, all right. Why don't we get started? As was already mentioned, Gail, thank you so much for bringing me out today. My name is Pat Sweet, and I'm a professional engineer hailing from Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is on the very far east coast of Canada. And I'm thrilled to be here with you today. This is one of these interesting opportunities presented by COVID, in fact, that I'm able to talk to you despite being way out in the middle of nowhere, halfway in the Atlantic Ocean, in fact. Um, Over the last decade or so, I've had the privilege of leading engineering teams through some of the world's most complex systems development projects, from automated driverless trains in Kuala Lumpur to basically redesigning the Canadian Navy with the world's most advanced new frigates. So really technically satisfying work, really good stuff. But as much as the technical side interests me, what I've found over the last several years is that what I'm most passionate about is developing engineers and engineering teams. And in a sense, I've started to shift my engineering mind and focus to the development of engineers and helping engineers unlock hidden potential. And that's why I'm excited as I am today to be here to talk to you about goals. Goals are, it's the kind of thing that everyone knows about, but people don't often appreciate just how powerful or underutilized they really are. I'm convinced that for those of us who want excellent careers and to do big things with our work and in groups like this, goals have to be a foundational part of that. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with a story. Imagine the year's 1961. Elvis is at the top of the music charts. West Side Story is the top of the box office, and cars were still works of art. They were beautiful. Meanwhile, in the White House, the president of the United States is about to do something a little bit unprecedented. Now, if you go back a couple years to 1957, the Soviet satellite Sputnik became the first man-made object to orbit the Earth. It was groundbreaking. Fast forward a couple years to 1959, Soviet Luna 2 successfully impacted the moon, another first, and another win for the Soviet space program. Then in April of 1961, Yuri Gagarin made history by becoming the first human to enter space. And with this, Yuri became a national hero in the Soviet Union. And the world really started to look at the Soviet Union and their space program as being the clear dominant force. They were winning the space race. Meanwhile, in the Western half of the world, America's sense of pride is hurting. And more importantly, Americans are starting to get worried about what the military implications might be of Soviet dominance of space. This is a bad time. Then, May 25th, 1961, just 43 days after this third major victory of the Soviet space race, President John F. Kennedy made what is now one of the most famous speeches ever to be made in Congress. And he declared, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth." Now, of course, we all know how things turned out in the end. We all know that the US successfully sent up Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the moon and brought them back safely, and ultimately won the space race. The Soviet Union was never able to replicate that feat. Now, we all know how it ends, but today, what I want to focus on is what happened in the very beginning with this goal. Today, I'm going to talk about goals and their power to transform both individuals like you and I and teams alike. I'll get into how to set powerful, meaningful goals, the steps that you can take to ensure you accomplish them as well. And my goal for this is that you're all going to leave about this thinking really big about what you can do in your own careers and what you can do as a collective when you set really strong goals. So first, I want to get clear on what I mean by goals. And you know, it's the kind of thing, it's a kind of word that we have all heard, right? We all basically know what a goal is, but until you really wrap your arms around in concrete terms what it means, it's very difficult to set and achieve strong goals. So my definition here, goals are significant transformations or results that you want to achieve within a certain time frame. So some concrete event or some concrete change that you either want to happen over a particular time or by a particular time. That's all a goal is. And ultimately, that makes goals quite simple. Despite this, many of us, if not most of us, fail to maintain or even set goals in the first place. And I think that's because most of us have never really been taught how. As a little aside, I'm a people manager in a large organization, and I've got a team spread throughout Canada. And right now, in fact, today is the deadline. I'm hoping my staff are doing this as we speak. Everyone is supposed to be submitting their goals for the year. And it's amazing how many are struggling. You know, what makes a good goal? How do I even come up with goals? What should a goal even look or sound like? How far should I push? And it really points to the fact that in the past, despite being really bright people, they've never really been given any kind of training or guidance in goal setting, despite there being that expectation each year that the company puts on them that they set these goals. So hopefully through this talk, we can avoid that same kind of situation for you all. Let's kick things off by talking about the importance of goals. Like why do we need goals? Again, I think we have an intuitive sense for why goals are important, but we don't necessarily know why. And I think this quote really sums it up nicely. Bill Copeland once said, "The trouble with not having a goal is that you can spend your life running up and down the field and never score." And ultimately, having goals act as our life's milestones. And where life has infinite opportunity, infinite possibility, you can do anything. You just can't do everything. But you do have to choose something, and that's what setting a goal does. Is it really sets what you are aiming for. Having goals helps to make sure that our work ultimately is in service to some concrete thing. Now, if we zoom in on this a little bit, I see four really concrete reasons goals are important. The first is that goals focus you, and that's probably the most important thing a goal can do. Because when you set a goal, you're making a clear choice on what you are going to work on, and maybe as importantly, what you're not going to work on. Because it's really easy to confuse the two and just see all work as good work. You just have to put your head down and do it. Now, this is something that's very, very important for productivity. A lot of people think of productivity as needing to work efficiently, right? Putting as little time or energy into a task as possible. Which is true. That's an important part of being productive at work, in life, in teams. But more important than that is being effective. Efficiency is being quick. Effectiveness is doing the right thing in the first place. There's a really good quote from a management consultant, basically the father of modern management theory, named Peter Drucker. And he says, "There's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all." I'll say that again. I really like this one. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. And you can only determine what needs to be done if you have a goal. You need an end state in order to understand what plan needs to be put in place, what work needs to be done in order to be effective. One of the things that I like to share with people about goal setting is that to choose a goal is a decision. And the word decide is a really interesting one. That second part of the word, decide, is the same root as some other words that folks in this room, I think, would be familiar with: herbicide and pesticide. So where herbicide is to something you apply to kill plants, and pesticide is something you apply to kill bugs, to decide is something you do to kill options. When you make a decision, you're eliminating other options. And that's one of the most powerful things that a goal will do. That's what I mean when I say a goal focuses you. You choose what you're doing, you're eliminating other options. The next really important thing that goals do for us is that they motivate us. They help to get us out of bed in the morning and really drive our ambition. Even by having a goal, really a concrete goal, makes it more likely that you actually want to work toward it. Having that end game in mind will drive your motivation and your ability to work towards it. There's really interesting research from Gail Matthews at a Dominican university who showed that even by writing a goal down, making it real, making it concrete by writing it, resulted in a 42% increase in goal achievement among study participants. It was just remarkable, just writing it down, making it a real goal. And I can share kind of a similar story from my own career. I've long wanted to become a project management professional. So it's a standard professional designation that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And back in 2017, I was 100% in. I bought the book, I set up a study space. I even had a schedule to say, to share with my family, this is what I'm going to study. Like, I'm going to lock myself in a room and hammer through this. I went as far as cutting out keywords and pieces of paper and creating little memory games for myself. Like, I was nerding out on this. There was just one problem. Despite all of the interest and excitement and motivation, looking back, I never actually set a goal. I knew what I wanted. I never set the by when date. I never had a true goal. Then partway through studying, my family moved to a new home. My daughter started a new school. I started a new job. And all of a sudden, all that, my study time evaporated. And then the test material changed. And I was back at square one. All that effort for nothing. Likely because I didn't have a goal in the first place. Now, fast forward to 2020, I saw an opportunity. We're all under COVID lockdowns, not much to do. I had all the time in the world to take another kick at the can and study for my PMP exam. I did one thing differently, and that is I signed up for the test. That was the first thing I did. And in doing that, I established a hard goal. There was no getting around it. It was going to be written on this date. And all I had to do was work out how I was going to get from where I was to that exam date. And luckily, I passed. Now, what's interesting here is I didn't actually do very much that was different. Really, what was different was setting that end date, which is a really, really important step. If we look at another example, kind of an imaginary example, imagine we've got two runners. We've got Tanya and we've got Bob. And Tanya has a goal to set her, to run her first marathon. She wants to get really good at running, run her first marathon, and she's going to do that by the end of the summer. Bob also wants to start running, but doesn't have a specific goal. He wants to lose a few pounds. He wants to get more fit, but doesn't commit to a goal. Imagine both these people lying in bed, 5:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off because they've committed, they're going to run that morning. And they roll over and they see outside it's raining and it's cold and they haven't set out the running clothes and they both just want to roll over. Which of the two of them do you think is more likely to actually drag their butts out of bed and go on the run? It's going to be Tanya every time, because she's got something in mind that she is working toward, that she knows if she doesn't put the work in today, she's more and more likely to miss the mark tomorrow. Okay, so goals are incredibly important in terms of motivating us. Not only do goals motivate us, they also push us. They bring us to higher levels of achievement than what we might otherwise get to if we didn't have goals. See, the very act of setting a goal forces some really interesting questions in your own mind. It forces you to reconcile yourself to, where do things stand now in my life? Where do I want to be? What's even possible? And as you start to ask these questions and explore the art of the possible, you get toward getting comfortable with moving outside of your comfort zone. You really draw those lines for yourself. And this is why President Kennedy, when he committed to sending an astronaut to the moon and bringing them back safely, he was pushing the art of the possible. The world had seen what was possible through the Soviet program, and he said, okay, fine, I'm taking it a step further. No, it's never been done, but I know where the line is. And by setting that goal, he essentially drew those lines and made that call. He was going to push himself even further. The final thing that goals do for you in terms of benefits is that they keep you oriented, they keep you on track. Over time, we're faced with innumerable opportunities, new ideas, new technologies, changes in our companies and our industries, all represent potential inflection points where you could veer left or you could veer right. And the trouble with that is choosing which opportunities are real. Which opportunities are real opportunities, as in bring you closer to what you want, and which ones are distractions. And this is never easy because frankly, you can't predict the future. But without having goals in place, it's nearly impossible to tell what things really are opportunities. True opportunities are those things that support you in your progress toward your goals. Everything else becomes noise. Now, the other side of it is that by having strong goals, you may recognize opportunity in things that you would not have before. You might not have looked at a particular situation or change and said, oh, well, this can help me. It might have just been noise originally. Earlier in my career, I had a personal goal. I was pursuing my MBA, and I had a personal goal to find a job once I was out of my MBA to really to combine both my technical work and kind of a business element somehow. It wasn't crystal clear to me how I wanted that to manifest, but I knew I wanted to essentially put my business education to work. That was really interesting to me. And in light of that goal, I opened up a job posting that my company had put out that I really had no idea what to expect. It was for a product manager. And I had never heard about product management before, had no idea what it was. It sounded like a cool title. So I opened it up. Lo and behold, it was exactly the job that I was hoping for. It was a beautiful combination, at least in my company, between technical work and leading R&D projects and studying the market and understanding what our competitors were doing and trying to converge those two things to drive product development forward. Now, had I not set that goal of combining those two elements in a future career, I probably wouldn't have opened the job posting, and I probably wouldn't have recognized it as the opportunity it really was. Because I had that goal, it allowed me to see the opportunity that really was there. See, in the absence of goals, you're kind of left to guess. You don't know whether to jump on something or not. So you got to go with your gut. And yeah, sometimes you'll be right, but it's impossible to tell without having really good goals in place. When you hit a fork in the road, the only way to know is where to go is to consult your map, and your goals act as your map. So we've talked about why goals are important, and covered some really important ground there. What I want to talk about now is how to set great goals. What does a really good goal look like? So for this next half of the talk, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about what a really good goal looks like and how to set yourself up for success when you do eventually set really good goals for yourself. In order for a goal to benefit you, it has to meet certain specs. It has to fulfill certain criteria. And many of you are probably familiar with the acronym SMART, which has been around since the 80s. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that's okay, because I'm gonna approach things a little bit differently. See, SMART goals are good, but there's a modification that I learned about from a man named Michael Hyatt, who's the former CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishing. And Hyatt advocates for what he calls smarter goals, which I think is really clever on his part to one up the SMART mnemonic. And in his parlance, SMARTER stands for specific, measurable, actionable, which those three are common to the SMART framework. But then there are a few differences. He says risky, time-keyed, exciting, and relevant. So a few of these should be jarring for people who are familiar with what SMART goals used to be. Again, if not, don't worry about it, because I'm going to explain each one of these one by one. Specific is clear enough that the greater the detail, the easier it is to formulate a specific plan for achieving a goal and for imagining yourself actually achieving it, right? If we go back to our example earlier, our runners, Tanya and Bob, Tanya had a goal to run her first marathon. And we already said that was better than saying, I just want to run more. But what would be even better than her goal to run her first marathon would be something like, I will complete the 2022 Miami Marathon in under 4 hours. That's a crystal clear goal. It's really easy to imagine yourself, running the streets of Miami in the hot summer sun, palm breeches at your sides, a nice summer breeze. It's really important, I think, to get crystal clear on your goals. And if this is Tanya's goal, as opposed to running the London Marathon, for example, that might even affect how you train, right? The weather's going to be different. The climate's going to be different. The hilliness is going to be different. All of these factors play into Tanya's goal. So I realize this is a running example, but this applies to anything, personally or professionally. The next thing that a goal should really abide by is it ought to be measurable. If a goal can't be measured, it's all but impossible to track progress against that goal. And then it's also very hard to determine what your definition of done is. How good is good enough? So a goal really does need to be measurable, such that it is totally unambiguous whether or not you've achieved that goal. That's one of the problems with Bob's goal of I want to run more. Well, if you didn't run at all last year, going for a run once meets the goal, but probably doesn't meet the intent of what he's trying to achieve. So measurability is very important. The next is actionable. A strong goal will make it clear what you need to physically do in order to work toward the goal. So strong action verbs within a goal are a great idea. A lot of people end up focusing on an end state that they want to achieve. They want to be a better engineer, right? They want to be more fit. They want to embody some sort of thing at the end. But formulating goals like that are problematic in that you don't know what you actually need to do to be a better engineer. Maybe you need to commit to reading 12 books in a particular field over the course of a year. That's concrete. That's something you can action, okay? So really good goals are actionable. This next one is my favorite one, is risky. For people familiar with traditional SMART goals, this R did not stand for risky. It stood for the opposite. It stood for realistic. And in the past, the whole idea was that you don't want to set yourself up for failure. You know, you don't want to commit, you know, to landing a big client worth $100 million if you've never done business development before. That's ridiculous, right? But in Michael Hyatt's framework here, the R is not ridiculous, but it is risky. The whole idea being that when a goal is easy to reach, it's easy to put off. It's easy to kind of sweep it under the rug. I'm not that worried about it. And this is why, a quick aside, my wife and I bought the current home we're in 3 years ago. And when we moved in, my wife said, I hate the blue door. Our front door is painted blue. Admittedly, it looks a little bit weird. I said, I promise I'll take care of it. I'll paint that door. It'll take a couple hours, no big deal. 3 years later, guess what color the door is? It's blue. It's totally blue. And I was reflecting on this because I feel like kind of a crummy husband, but B, like, why? This is not a big deal. This is something I could have done at any time. And that's the point, is I could have done it at any time. So very easy to rationalize, pushing it off, pushing it off, pushing it off. Goals are the same way. If they're not at least a little bit risky, you don't feel that fire under your butt to do something about it. And here's the thing, is if you set a risky goal and you fall short, that's still okay, because 9 times out of 10, you will outperform the reasonable goal that you might have put in place otherwise. So you're still ahead, even if you push the envelope a little bit too far. So I really like that risky element of goals. For T, we have time keyed, and time keyed is another slight variation. It used to be time bound, but that ignored the fact that there are ultimately 2 different kinds of goals. There's what we call achievement goals and habit goals. Everything we've talked about so far have been achievement goals. You know, run the marathon, paint the door. There's very concrete outcomes that we're working toward. Now, what if you had a goal to get married? Okay, so you know, under the normal framework, you would say, well, I'm going to get married by December 31st, 2021. And I'll just pick the least bad person that I've met that year, and then my goal will be accomplished. It's probably not a good recipe for success, right? Not recommended. So what we have instead are habit goals, things that you know if you adopt a particular process, you will make progress toward the desired end state. So for example, a fitness goal might be, I will go to the gym 4 times a week, every week for the next 12 months. That's a concrete goal. There's not really a deadline, but there is a time element. Now, for the marriage example, maybe you commit to meeting 1 new person every week for the next year. That's something you can do, right? Without trying to force some sort of awkward deadline, okay? So the T is for time keyed, either a certain cadence or rhythm or a deadline. The E stands for exciting. And to me, that this almost goes without saying. In order to achieve any goal, especially risky ones, they need to be exciting to you. You need to be really gung ho about it. You're going to want to work on it. And if you're excited about it, that's a really good sign. If you find you've got goals that you don't really care about, you're not really excited about, that's a major red flag. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why am I not excited about this goal? Is this a goal that you've given yourself to make someone else happy? Is it some sort of expectation that you've always had for yourself, but maybe doesn't apply as well as it used to? A goal can be perfectly structured. You can have all the right elements in place, but if it's not exciting, you've really got to question that in yourself. And generally, that's only something that you can answer for yourself, right? So that's it's kind of like honesty time with the self. Is this goal exciting? And if not, maybe think twice about that. And the final element here is relevant. Goals need to reflect your life situation, your values, your position in life, your employers. For example, if you've got a goal that directly contradicts what your company is trying to achieve, and that when one of you achieves your goal, the other one loses, there's inherent conflict there, and you're really setting yourself up to fail in one way or another. So goals need to be relevant. They need to make sense with respect to you and your life. The next and final thing that I want to talk about here is how to manage your goals such that you can really drive towards success. We've talked about what goals are, why they're important, and even what a good goal looks like, but none of that matters if we're not actually achieving our goals. That's the whole point here. That's why we're here, is to set ourselves up to do big things. Some studies have shown that up to 80% of New Year's resolutions fail. 80%. And most people give up by about mid-February, right? This is a massive failure of goal setting and goal accomplishment. And my goal with this is to provide you with some tools, some ideas, some approaches to set yourself for success in the long run, such that you become part of that 1 out of 5 that actually is able to achieve your goals. And you'll see with some of these strategies, it's not actually that hard. There are some simple things that you can do to really significantly improve the likelihood of success. The first thing that I recommend is visibility. Keep goals visible. We've all heard the axiom, out of sight, out of mind, right? And this is especially true of goals. And there's an important reason for this. Organizational culture today really is set up to favor tackling what's urgent as opposed to the important. And I think this is true of most industries. I think it's especially true in engineering. We all complain about firefighting. We all just can't stand it, but somehow find ourselves more often than not doing exactly that, firefighting, tackling whatever it is that came up that day. And the core issue is that within all of this busyness, it's incredibly easy to lose sight of our goals. Just because something is urgent doesn't actually mean it's important. And when something is both urgent and important, yeah, that's great, because it's this urgent element that will actually drive us closer to our goals. But once that stuff is taken care of, we mix things up, and the next pile of stuff we tackle is the stuff that's urgent and not the stuff that's important but not necessarily urgent, even though we know, sitting where we are today, that's what's going to drive us forward in the long run. It's incredibly hard to do that. So we lose sight of our goals. So one of the things that we can do to maintain this visibility, maintain this familiarity with our goals, is to set up systems to keep them front and center, anticipate this issue, and put them in front of ourselves and our lives, both mentally and physically. There's a couple of good ways to do this. One of my favorite ways is to set up what I call a goals board. And you can do this in any number of ways. One of my favorite ways is to create a desktop background for my computer, just using PowerPoint, and clip a bunch of relevant pictures or images that remind you of the goals you're trying to accomplish. You can even literally type out your goals and have that be part of the sidebar. Just physically have it in front of your face. I've known people to do that and print it out and frame it in their office, or put it on an underlay under a transparent pad on their desk. Just anything to keep it front and center, because otherwise it won't be front and center. If it's buried in a folder somewhere, if you're not looking at it regularly, it's very, very easy for it to slip by the wayside. Another idea is to set up what's called a goal visualization ritual. And trust me, I know it sounds hokey, but it works, okay? There's a really, really good story about Michael Phelps. You'll all know Michael Phelps, the Olympic gold medal swimmer. In the 2016 Rio Olympics, when he dived in the water to begin his 200-meter breaststroke, an event that everyone knew he was going to win, something went wrong. His goggles broke and filled with water. And for any of you who are swimmers, this effectively rendered him blind. He could not see. He competed the race blind, won the gold medal, set a world record. And afterward, it came to light what had happened, because people could kind of tell that something was wrong, but couldn't understand why. So it came to light after the fact that his goggles broke. And I said, how do you win a gold medal with broken goggles? And he said, well, I visualized the race so many times, I knew where the wall was going to be. I knew how many strokes I needed to take. I played it out in my head 1,000 times. And that's the kind of strategy that is very common in elite athletes right now. And it's the kind of strategy that we can employ too. The pursuit of a goal doesn't have to be athletic. I know I invoke that kind of thing quite a bit to illustrate the point, but you can literally visualize yourself accomplishing goals, working on goals, what that would feel like, what the room would be like, how the air would smell when you finally cross that line. This is incredibly powerful and really helps to make real these goals for you. Another simple idea is to literally write them out. There's a great business author, a guy named Brian Tracy, and he's written about 1,000 books on productivity, leadership. And one of the things that he recommends with your goals is to buy a cheap notebook and spend time every day writing out your goals verbatim, word for word, day after day. And by going through the exercise of writing out your goals, you become intimately familiar with them. You can actually remember them after a while. And having them in your subconscious on a daily basis is incredibly powerful. It's all but impossible to forget your goals if you're literally copying them day after day. Again, this doesn't have to take very long. This is a simple exercise and an important one, given how easy it is for them to fall by the wayside if you don't take active steps towards doing this kind of thing. The next thing that I want to talk about here in terms of things you can do to improve the likelihood of success is accountability. And I realize accountability is a word that makes a lot of people squeamish, right? Normally, accountability is something that is imposed on you. Your boss comes to you to keep you accountable or to hold you to account for not having done something you're supposed to do. And understandably, this is why people get a little bit uncomfortable with accountability. But I'm going to turn that on its head a little bit here. And what I'm talking about here is accountability that you invite. It's the act of asking others to keep you honest, which is really important, because when you set risky goals, when you set big goals, when you are pushing for higher performance, it's very easy, A, to kind of lose track of where you are, and B, to rationalize not going as fast or as far as you really want to. And by inviting some positive peer pressure from others, it forces you to reconcile yourself to whether or not your performance is actually on track. And this is very, very powerful. This isn't someone coming in and beating you over the head. This is you asking someone to help you achieve what you know you want to achieve, and also can anticipate it's going to be hard later on. There are a couple of productive ways to do this. Very, very concrete things that you can do to invite this accountability. And the simplest is to advertise your goals. And no, I'm not talking about buying an ad, but literally making it public knowledge what your goals are. Tell your boss, tell your peers, tell your friends, your partner, explain exactly what you're trying to accomplish. Share it at parties, right? The people who care about you in your life are going to take an interest and are going to A, want to help you, B, ask you about it the next time they run into you. They're going to want to know how things are going because your friends and the people in your life want to support you. You're going to have to speak to that. You're going to have to explain to your friend that you haven't seen in a month, oh, I haven't written the first page of my book yet. And you're going to realize you have no real good excuse, right? So this is something to really keep you honest. Another idea is what I call a success pack. So a success pack is a group of people who are more than just friends or your boss. It's a more intentional group that you invite as kind of like a personal board of directors. These are typically people who are familiar with the kind of work that you're signing up for. So if, for example, you have a goal, well, let's take that example, to write your first book. You might go find someone who is an author or someone in your life who knows about writing and ask them to be part of your success pack, all right? Ask them to help guide you and to ask permission to meet with them on a regular basis so that you can discuss progress. This is like leveling up from just advertising your goals. Is you bring a group very actively together to help you along the way and keep you on track. Another thing you can do is to bring a friend. Everything is easier when you do it with someone. We go back to the example with Tanya and Bob. If Tanya is really serious about running her first marathon, she'll find someone else who also wants to run a marathon, because it's much, much harder to roll over in bed at 5:30 in the morning if you know your friend is going to show up at your door in 10 minutes and you don't want to be the one holding up the works, okay? Again, it's positive peer pressure that you are inviting, you are welcoming, because you know in those moments of weakness, it's going to nudge you just over the edge. All of these are very easy to do, but very, very powerful. Finally, there's the important business of actually doing the work to achieve your goals. And one of the most important things you can do here is to make it a routine to work towards your goals. Make it your habit, just your way of operating, to make regular, recurring installments of effort towards your goals. And I really want to emphasize the word routine here, because successful organizations and successful people are those that take active steps on a regular basis, day in, day out, regardless of how easy or hard it is on a given day. There's a really interesting work from business researchers Jim Collins and Morton Hansen, and they call this habit the 20-mile march. And they steal this term from a man named Roald Amundsen, who led the first successful expedition to the South Pole. And he approached things this way. He had his team, as soon as they landed in Antarctica, he had his team march 20 miles every day toward the pole. Whether it was a blizzard or sunny, warm, cold, windy, didn't matter. It was 20 miles every day. His competitor, Robert Falcon Scott, who was basically hot on his heels. It really was a race to the South Pole. Both expeditions were preparing and traveling at about the same time. Falcon Scott had his team march 40 to 60 miles on good days and rest on bad days. And the end result was that Amundsen and his team ended up making it to the South Pole way ahead of Scott. Not only did Scott's team end up there 34 days later, the whole team sadly didn't make it back alive, right? Because their strategy really didn't facilitate the climate or working within the constraints that were real for them. Now, there are a number of reasons that their expedition didn't work, and this is just one of them, but it really does illustrate the value of slow and steady wins the race. You do need to make steady progress. So that's the real take-home message here is no matter what your goals are, what form they take, making regular installments of effort, whether you want to or not, whether it's easy or not, is an incredibly important skill to have in your tool belt with respect to achieving goals. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked a lot about goals, and we've dug into their importance, what great goals look like, how to structure them, and how to set yourself up for success. So it begs the question: where do we go from here? What do we do next? And what I'm going to challenge you all with is to take this and apply it in your own context, because nothing I've said today is of any value if you now don't go and take action. In fact, take bold action with respect to what I've said. If you don't already have personal goals in place, if you don't have goals on the teams you work on, I'm challenging you to set some real goals. Set at least 3 smarter goals for yourself and really choose concrete things that you want to do in order to push yourself forward in your career. And for those of you who do have goals, that's awesome. I'm going to challenge you to take a really hard look at them. Ask yourself, does this meet the smarter framework? Is this something I'm excited about? Is this something that really is risky? Am I actually pushing myself towards something that I want to achieve as opposed to meeting someone else's expectations? And you may be shocked at what you learn about the things that you've been pursuing, maybe in some cases for years. And then for everyone, I'm going to challenge you to really actually determine what the concrete next steps are that you're going to take in order to accomplish your goals. What are you going to do? And really put that into writing and get clear on what that path looks like so that you can begin your own 20-mile march. Michelangelo once said, "The great danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark." Now, few of us are ever going to be involved in sending someone into space and bringing them back safely, but as engineers, no matter what work you do, we all have the possibility of doing incredible work and incredibly important work in this world. So I hope that today you will have all learned something that you can use to help yourself achieve really and truly great things and perform at the level that you really are capable of. Thank you very much.